Exodus 2, and we'll just take the first 10 verses of the chapter. The title is Accelerating to Escape. Now, if ever you needed to escape, it would be if you were in a place the Bible calls the house of bondage. You'd want to get out of there in a hurry, wouldn't you? And the children of Israel did. And after 430 years, they finally get their escape. But this leads up to it. Here's how it all begins to build. Exodus 2, verse 1. And there went a man of the house of Levi, and he took a wife to the daughter of Levi. And the woman conceived and bare a son. And when she saw him, that he was a goodly child, she hid him 3 months. And when she could no longer hide him, she took for him an ark of bulrushes, and daubed it with slime and with pitch, and put the child therein, and she laid it in the flags by the river bank. And his sister stood afar off to wit what would be done to him. She's curious. Verse 5. And the daughter of Pharaoh came down to wash herself at the river. And the maidens walked along by the river's side. And when she saw the ark among the flags, she sent her maids to fetch it. And when she had opened it, she saw the child. And behold, the babe wept. And she had compassion on him, and said, This is one of the Hebrews' children. And she said, then said his sister to Pharaoh's daughter, Shall I go and call thee a nurse of the Hebrew women, that she may nurse the child for thee? And Pharaoh's daughter said to her, Go. And the maid went and called the child's mother. And Pharaoh's daughter said unto her, Take this, I like that phrase, this child. Real connection there in this thing, this child away, and nurse it for me, and I will give thee thy wages. And the woman took the child and nursed it, and the child grew, and she brought him to Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son. And she called his name Moses. And she said, Because I drew him out of the water. Now, we talked about that a little this morning. Names mean something in the Bible. Usually, if a name means something you're supposed to know, the Bible will interpret it. There, it just interpreted. You want to know what Moses means? It means I drew him out of the water. He came out. He went down, but he didn't stay down. The first thing we'll notice in our acceleration plan to escape is this: a blessing that must be kept quiet. You know, somebody else who had a blessing that must be kept quiet was Mary, before the birth of Christ. Imagine that. The angel comes down and tells her this great news: Messiah's coming and you're bringing him in. Now, she got to keep that thing quiet. She doesn't know all the details. For this couple right here in the land of Egypt, the house of bondage, the rule had been given: if a child comes out that's a man child, we're going to kill it. They decided, you ain't taking this one, buddy. So they got to keep that child quiet. You ever tried to keep a baby quiet? They got a job on their hands. Exodus 2, look at verse 2. It says, And the woman conceived and bare a son, and when she saw him, that he was a goodly child. What's a goodly child? The one God gave you. It doesn't matter what it is. If ever God gave you something, that's good. Don't be complaining about your lot in life. It's the one God gave you. It's good. He didn't give you something that's wicked. Otherwise, you're telling him that as a father, he gives you a stone or a serpent. He doesn't do that. Whatever he gives you is good. You can count on it. You might not understand it, but it's good. Now, I'm sure that Moses' parents may have had doubts. God, is this really the right time to produce a man-child? They already had 2. Do we really need a 3rd at this moment? I mean, I don't mind you giving me this, but could you wait until the pressure cools off? Till they're not killing babies right now? No, that's when he did it. God's got perfect timing. Might not seem so in our eyes. Look at James chapter 1. James 1 verse 17. He says, Every good gift and every perfect gift is from above, and cometh down from the Father of lights, with whom is no variableness, neither shadow of turning. God gave you something. Whatever you got, God gave you. If you're a Christian, you're his child, and you subsist 100% on him. I know you think you worked and you made a paycheck. You didn't. God allowed you to have that. That's something that came from God. Your breath this morning when you woke up and got out of bed was not yours. You did nothing to earn it. He gave it to you. Okay, good gifts. Good gifts. Look at Exodus 4. Exodus 4, verse 12. I'm going to cover so much Bible, we're going to fly in just a minute. And you won't be able to turn to all of them, but you'll hear it. Exodus 4, verse 12. Now, therefore, go, God speaking to Moses, and I will be with thy mouth, and teach thee what thou shalt say. You ever been there? As a Christian, you should have. Many a time you wanted to say something, or you were called on the carpet to say something, and you didn't know what to say. And all of a sudden, God gave you the answer. Should be some spots you can look back at and say, yeah, that wasn't me. God came through there. He told me exactly what to say. That's a good gift. Good gift. God gives good gifts. Now, that's a sign that the escape is coming. Matthew chapter 11. Matthew 11, verse 25. Don't take it for granted. Matthew 11, 25. Don't take it for granted that God does this stuff for you. The rest of the world doesn't get that kind of thing. They are 100% dependent on a defunct brain. They don't have a sound mind. And that's all they've got to work with. Not a Christian. A Christian has got the sound mind from God that we have access to. That book in your lap. Matthew 11, verse 25. Jesus speaking. At that time, Jesus answered and said, here he's going to pray, I thank thee, O Father, Lord of heaven and earth, because thou hast hid these things from the wise and prudent, and hast revealed them unto babes. If you understand anything of the Scripture, don't take it for granted. That's a gift from God. You know, he's hiding things from people. The Bible says that's what God likes to do. You start thinking you're smart, he'll start hiding stuff from you. Just to prove to you, you ain't so smart. Verse 11. Even so, Father, for it seemed good in thy sight. Yeah, goodly child, and you've got some goodly things yourself. If you're a Christian, don't take them for granted. Miriam and Jochebed, what's his name? Jochebed and... I almost said Levi, but no. Jochebed and Amram, is that right? All right. Amram and Jochebed may have thought, this is a good thing, but what do we do with it? Sometimes that'll be the case. God gives you some good things, and you look at it and you recognize it's from God, and you recognize it's good, but the timing just don't feel right. Count on it. He's got an answer for all of it. Just hang on. You've just got a small piece of the puzzle. Amram and Jochebed were not told all the details. God didn't send any angel down there to explain to them, this baby's going to be hid away for 3 months, and then you're going to take it out there, and you're going to put it in the river, and Pharaoh's daughter's going to come down there, and then he's going to go live in the palace, and she's going to pay you to feed him like you were already going to do anyway. He didn't tell them all that information. But it happened. God had a plan when they didn't. Look at the other thing about this is they only get him for a small, limited amount of time. A lot of the gifts of God are not intended for a lifetime. Enjoy them the time that God gave them to you. You know, he says over there in Psalms, he makes him to walk through the valley of the shadow of death. You know, you can walk through the valley of the shadow of death and know he's got a table prepared just the other side of it in the presence of your enemies, and you can sit down and eat that with the enemies watching, and it won't hurt anything because God did it all. Enjoy what he's given you in the time he's given it to you without overcomplicating it. If I had been Miriam and Jochebed, I think I'd have been looking out the window all the time. worried about, oh no, they're coming down the road. Get that baby in the closet. Shut that boy up. Put a pacifier in his mouth. Okay. He says in Acts 7 verse 20. Another passage that talks about this same event. Acts 7 verse 20. In which time Moses was born, and was exceeding fair, and nourished up in his father's house 3 months. Talk about heartbreaking. You only get your child for 3 months? I think I'd rather have a stillborn than get to know it for 3 months. Enjoy him. Begin to see a personality develop. Then you got to go take him to the river. You know what's happening at the river? They're killing the babies. You know what that tells me? Crocodile City. And you're going to put your baby down in that puddle of crocodiles? Sounds scary. He's a proper child. Look at Hebrews chapter 11. Hebrews 11, verse 23. By faith, Moses, when he was born, was hid 3 months. There it is again. 3 times in the Bible you're told 3 months. Must be something to that. 3 months of his parents, because they saw he was a proper child, and they were not afraid of the king's commandments. Whew. He's proper according to God, but not according to the king, and not according to society, and not according to his parents' safety. Because at this time what's happening is that male children are being killed. They said, nope, God gave it to us, it's proper, regardless of what's going on. It's proper to stand on whatever God says, period. The society may say that everybody's transgender or trans whatever other rule they want to break of God's, but it's safe to say whatever God says we'll stand behind. Even though the king's commanding right now death sentences to anybody who goes against him. They said, no, it's proper just to hang on to what God had to say. Next thing we'll see back in our text, Exodus 2. Exodus 2 in verse 3. I call this sheep among wolves. If you wanted to keep your baby safe, I don't think I'd have picked this spot to go. Exodus 2, verse 3. His mama here is talking about. And when she could not longer hide him, that his lungs have reached the decibels where the neighbors in the next neighborhood are coming over to see what's going on. That would have been a tough job. Keeping the baby quiet. There was some point where it was said that we can't go anymore. She knew it. Her husband knew it. God was making it plain to them. I've given you a 3-month enjoyment period. Now we're going to move it to the next phase. God's blessings don't always seem like blessings. Think about it. The baby's born. Great, we've got a baby. And it's a male. Not quite as great right now. They're all getting killed. That's okay. We'll work around it. We'll hide him. Oh, good idea. But he sure is crying a lot. Not so great. That's the way God's blessings feel like. Up and down and up and down. He's good, no, it's bad. He's good, no, it's bad. Now it reaches a fevered pitch. They start thinking, well, we were used to having him in the closet, but now he can't. He's out screaming the closet. Okay, it's going to proceed. God only gives you good gifts. Count on it. Let's see what happens next. God moves them to do this. Verse 3. And when she could not longer hide him, she took for him an ark of bulrushes and daubed it with slime and with pitch. That all sounds pretty good. And put the child therein, and she laid it in the flags by the river's bank. It's out of her hands. I mean literally out of her hands. But that's all part of God's plans. Matthew 10. Matthew 10, verse 16. Jesus says, "Behold, I send you forth as sheep in the midst of wolves." Think about it. God created the animals. He knows animals. He knows the strengths and the weaknesses of each. His people, if he was going to compare them to something, wouldn't you think he would have said, "I'm going to send you out as lions amongst a bunch of rats"? No, he does just the opposite. You're the weakling, the wimp. I'm going to send you amongst giants and killers. Be ye therefore vicious. No, wise as serpents and harmless as doves. It's going to be something totally different than man's way of thinking. So for Amram, Jochebed, they're taking the baby down to the place that all the babies are getting killed. And there he's going to survive. Acts 7. Acts 7, verse 19. This verse just hit me preparing this message. I don't know why, but this one, I finally saw what it said. Matthew 7, verse 19. Oh, Acts 7. Acts 7, verse 19. Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, Acts. Yeah, I can't read. Acts 7, verse 19. The same dealt subtly with our kin, and evil treated our fathers. Who's our fathers? The Israelites. So that they, the Israelites, cast out their young children, to the end they might not live. You know what was going on in Israel at this time? The Israelites themselves were heeding the law of Pharaoh and killing their own children. That's what the verse says. The devil wants to do a number on your mind. He wants you to work against yourself. What God had intended for blessings to all of the Israelites, many of them were destroying with their own hands. We're not too far from doing that ourselves. 1 Peter 5. 1 Peter 5, verse 7. This is a promise that we should all hold on to. And the longer you live, the more you're going to need it. Because what might happen in your life, you see as a tragedy. It's not really a tragedy, because if it's happening in your life, your Father's in control. And God's taking care of you. And He's taking care of business. You can count on it. But you're probably not going to get all the information from Him. I like to use this little analogy. A kid, when he's at your house, a child, you intend on feeding them every day. Maybe once a day. But you don't intend to tell him what you're going to feed him every day. Many times we're like this little child. We come to God and say, "What are you going to feed me next year?" "I don't know. Just count on it. You'll get something." Don't worry about it. We don't have to have all the details. We can trust the one who's working it all out. We're seeing it unfold as it happens. So here's what we got to do. 1 Peter 5, 7. Casting all your care upon Him. Why? You don't need it anymore. If you're hanging on to your care, then you continue to care about it. He says, no, get rid of it. Cast all your care on Him, for He careth for you. That's part of His job, not yours. Cast it on Him. Let go of it. Psalm 27, 14. Amram and Jochebed probably doing this, biting their nails. Psalm 27, 14. Wait on the Lord and be of good courage, and He shall strengthen thine heart. Wait, I say, on the Lord. They're down there waiting. Their ears are perked at anybody coming from that direction. Okay, go out there and look at what kind of bundles are they carrying. You know you'd be watching. Eventually the sister at some point goes out there and becomes spy. You know, she's got a full-time job to be the spy cam. You know, they got those doorbells that when you ring the doorbell, it's got a camera that's looking at you, and the people inside can say, "Go away, we don't want in here," or whatever. That was the first version of it right there. It's Psalm 55, a few chapters over. Psalm 55, verse 22. I'm trying to make this realistic because it is realistic. Psalm 55, verse 22. He says, "Cast thy burden upon the Lord, and he shall sustain thee. He shall never suffer the righteous to be moved." That's easy to read, not so easy to do. You can read that and you can practice it when there are no problems. Yes. Let a problem show up. Then that verse becomes very difficult. This is what Amram and Jochebed are learning to do. They've got some serious cares going on. If it was just from a human point of view, we would say that's pretty cruel. God allows them to have a baby, fall in love with it for 3 months, and then take it out there to the river where they're all dying. He says, no, cast your burden, cast your care, give it all to God, and count on it. He's taking care of you. It's going to turn out better than your little mind is imagining. Mark chapter 4, Mark 4, verse 38. You'll cast your care and your burden on Jesus, and then you turn around and you think, he didn't even care. When he doesn't answer it the way you want him to, or jump to it when you say jump, we start thinking, well, I told him I need this fixed and he ain't done it, therefore, okay, no. Let him do it in his time. He's the one in charge, not my little demands. Mark 4, verse 38. Here there's a storm going on, and he's in this ship. And he was in the hinder part of the ship, asleep on a pillow. And they awake him and said unto him, Master, carest thou not that we perish? Verse 40. And he said unto them, Why are you so fearful? And how is it you have no faith? This is another life and death situation. And he says, even in life and death situations, when you commercial fishermen who know the sea have decided the sea is turned against you worse than you've ever seen or heard of, and you think you're going to die, even in that instant you should have faith in me. Amram and Jochebed are learning they can have confidence and faith in Jesus, well, it wasn't Jesus back then, in God, to take care of the situation even without them being present. John 10, verse 13. The hireling fleeth because he is a hireling, and careth not for the sheep. That's exactly what happens. John 10, verse 13. The hireling, that's somebody you hired in to watch out for the sheep. He doesn't care about those sheep. You know what a hireling is? You can see it very plainly nowadays. Go into any fast food restaurant, and what you'll see is somebody come working at the register who could care less. I'll show you what happened to me. I went to Dunkin' Donuts this past week just because I was hungry, in a hurry, and it was close. I don't really care for their donuts, but you know, food's food. And not that that's food. So I go in. I ordered 3 donuts and a coffee. 3 donuts and a coffee. The guy, first it was a woman up there, and then she kind of wandered off, and then another guy came up there, and he took my order, 3 donuts and a coffee. Okay, he said, I'm just going to give you the coffee. Okay, maybe he didn't know how to punch it in or something. Okay, fine, thank you. I finally get my order, and it's 6 donuts and a free coffee. You know what I figured out? They get to leave when it's all gone. That's a hireling. He's not worried about the profit. He's worried about going home early. That's a hireling. He said, here's what a hireling does. He flees. First chance he gets, he's out the door. because he doesn't care about the sheep. Jesus says, I am the good shepherd, and I know my sheep, and I am known of mine. He's watching out for you. Amram and Jochebed are learning it. They're learning it through life experience. We can look it up on the pages of the Bible and then learn it at life experience. You're going to get both. Now what she did was she daubed that thing. She made her up a little boat to put him in. And she daubed it with slime and pitch. That's to keep the water out, keep it floating. That was a smart thing to do. But guess what? That boat wouldn't have looked too pretty. That's you and me. Our outward is not supposed to be what's attractive. It's the thing God puts in you that's attractive. You'll know it. You can meet somebody who's been out in the world and just looks rough and mean, but they get saved and there's something in them that's just attractive. You wouldn't know it from the outside. The outside is rough and tough looking. But you start talking to them about God, or they start talking about the Bible, and it's something has changed. There's a softness there that wasn't there before. The outside and the inside are totally different in that little boat. And we have made it to 2 points. There's no way we're going to finish this.
You want to do part two?
Yeah, maybe we'll do a part 2. I'll just give you the outline, so if we don't decide to do the rest of this, you'll know what it is. The next thing is a reversal of rationale. That'll be in chapter 2, verse 5 to 6. And then in verse 9, blessing returns with dividends. And verse 10 is the promise of Exodus.